Welcome into another episode of They've Got Now. I'm really excited to be joined today by the head coach over at University of Toledo, Ginny Boggess. Ginny, first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Coming off 2 days of recruiting, so I was in Minnesota and then Cincinnati, but little scratchy voice from the airlines and the hotels, but I couldn't possibly be better.
Yeah, it's also that, that's just November in Ohio. So you get used to it. West Virginia is pretty much Ohio, so you know how it goes. But yeah, somehow already about a month into the season, Thanksgiving is just around the corner, which I am not ready for. I'm ready for it, but also I just know like my game watching schedule the next couple days is gonna be nuts. How are you kind of feeling so far? I know you probably haven't had a second to really sit down and think about it, but what has first month kind of felt like as you guys have gotten into games?
The first month has felt, I think probably like any new head coach or coach taking over a new position would say, it feels exciting, it feels encouraging. Um, there have been bumps in the road. I am so proud of this team and the leadership on this team and the buy-in of the young kids and the buy-in of the returners. So, it doesn't matter what we're going into, it matters who we're going in with. And knowing that I've got, an incredible staff and I get to lock arms with those young women every day and that we're all on the same mission, makes me want to work even harder to not let them down.
No, I love that. And I think that's, a great aspect to hit on right away in terms of just looking at this school and the tradition. I think it's something I took for granted a little bit being there. And you made a really great point of talking about in your opening press conference about just like how, the rest of the world's kind of catching up to Toledo, but like Toledo has consistently been like top 10, top 25 in the country in attendance for women's basketball, which is, credit to Tricia and her staff for building that up, but also just always a consistent part. My dog decided to make an entrance too. But yeah, I think with that aspect, like what has it been kind of getting to feel that? Because again, like I think it was what I was used to when I was there. So what has that been like kind of getting that feel, especially with quite a few home games to open up?
Well, first of all, the six man has been a huge boost for us. So they quite literally in these close games are giving us that extra little jolt that we need. But I'm just so humbled by it. I'm so honored. I knew from the outside looking in, oh, great fan base. My wife so brilliantly articulated. I was like, baby, it's like 5,000 fans. She's like, that's 5,000 opinions. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah, that's a good point.
whoa. Um, so a lot of eyes on the program, but I've been so overwhelmed by their just unwavering support. They just are so proud of this team and these women and who they are off the court as well, who they are as student athletes. Our GPA is so impressive. These are high achieving women in every area of their life. So the team is just teaming and the fans are just fanning and letting us kind of do what we do and settle in. And, they joke about this. We've had a couple really slow starts, but we've been able to go 3-0 at home. And so they've been really excited about that. And coach, we know you're not trying to start slow. And I'm like, no, we're certainly not. But they just love the game and you can feel their energy. I think they're enjoying the new style. They're enjoying the new players and a little bit of the unpredictability of a faster pace. So it's just been so good. Our leadership is all in on women's basketball, which allows me to kind of do what I do and be the head coach and be the face of the program. And they handle the game day experience. We got a brand new scoreboard with runners. It's an NBA starting like lineup pregame show at Toledo. It's absolutely unbelievable. And like I said, I just feel really honored to be the leader.
Yeah, I can't say it enough to people. Again, I'm biased because I went there, but like Savage is an incredible arena. It's the best in the MAC. It's one of the best. It beats out a lot of power arenas in terms of just how up to date it is, what it's like. Actual in-game venue is really great. And I love what you said about the leadership too. I think the deeper I've gotten into this, the more that you kind of get an appreciation and recognition that it's not like that everywhere. It helps you. Like Todd is great over with the men's program. He does a
Yes.
fantastic job, but has always been, somebody who is probably the number one supporter of the women's basketball team as well. So just having that side by side, I think is really big because again, not every program is like that, especially as, we've gotten deeper into NIL too. Um, but I want to kind of turn it and conversely ask too, just like, how did this job come on your radar? Because I remember it was a little bit later in the cycle for jobs starting to opening up as far as it goes now, and I just remember being like shocked. So I was like, I just never envisioned Trisha leaving,
Right.
which excited
Right.
for her, obviously, and they're doing great things. But like, what was that kind of like coming off of a really good season at Monmouth, knowing that this was, when this first kind of came onto your radar?
Well, I was not at the Final Four. Brian Blair has joked that 98% of the candidates he interviewed were right there in Cleveland and so convenient, except for the one that he actually hired. And so I wasn't looking. Yeah, I didn't have an agent. And Kristen and I decided to just, after 3 years at Monmouth, it's such a build, it's such a grind. We decided to forego the Final Four last spring and head down to actually Key Biscayne, which is right outside of Miami. Just have like a long weekend and just kind of unwind and relax. And sure enough, we get settled in at the pool that first day, and my phone buzzes, and I get a text message from a search firm that said, "Would you be interested in the vacant position at the University of Toledo?" And we had just sat down at the
Yeah.
pool, and I looked at Kristen and I read it out loud, and she goes, "We're moving again, aren't we?" And I was like, "Not necessarily." So it was one of those things where, I reached out to my AD at Monmouth instantly, obviously, and then it happened very quickly. But the moment that I got on the call with Brian Blair and his team, I felt a palpable sense of passion for women's basketball. I felt the support of his team for him, which lets me know that he's a really, really good leader. You could feel that they wanted to get it right for Toledo. And so it moved very, very quickly. We did a Zoom, and then we did another one, and then they flew me to Cleveland on Sunday night. So instead of coming back to New Jersey, I went to Cleveland, met with them late that night. And Monday morning he called, and I thought it was actually Monday afternoon, because I'd met with my athletics director at Monmouth that morning, and he called, and I thought he was going to ask me on campus. I thought I might be one of two, and he instead called and offered me the job. So things moved quickly, but the more I got into the research of the history of Toledo, the tradition of excellence, and not just women's basketball, across athletics, the opportunity, with three nursing freshmen on our team. I have a senior nursing major. There are women student athletes majoring in engineering at Toledo. There's so many opportunities here on both sides of the ball. I thought it would be a really good fit, and I thought it was a community that I could get behind.
No, absolutely. And I think kind of off that too, like you mentioned in terms of just coming in and having that, like this is a very veteran team, and the recruiting class was massive as well. When you look at just kind of coming into that kind of environment, like you mentioned, Monmouth was more of a rebuild, and here it's like, okay, cool, we have something, and now I need to work to keep, obviously the essence of what it was, but also put your own stamp on it. How do you do that? I know that's like I don't know, it's a pretty loaded, like bigger question, but in general, I think um to me, I feel like that's almost harder in some ways than starting with a blank slate, because it's like, all right, well, I don't want to lose what made this team a MAC title contender
Right.
last year. But also like I have my own ideas, I have my own philosophies. There's obviously differences with this group now after some departures. Like, how do you kind of go about that?
Yeah, I think that was one thing that, I'll be honest, was really intimidating. Didn't know, when we got to Marquette, total rebuild. Well, it go back even more when I was at Columbia with Stephanie Glantz, total rebuild. When we got to Marquette, total rebuild. When we got to Penn State, total rebuild. Monmouth, total rebuild. So I knew kind of what that felt like and looked like, and had a couple blueprints, and
Hmm.
was, I'm a leader that's willing to pivot. Just because it worked here doesn't mean it's going to work there. So going into it, I was like, okay, how do you attack something that is not necessarily a rebuild? But there were things, that needed to be addressed to play the way that I want to play. Some of the language was a big hurdle. What do you call this? Well, we call it this. So all those things I think that are new to a program. But I think the biggest thing was identifying what was really important to the players and making sure that they could hang on to that. Some very little things that, with all of the newness, some little things that they wanted to hang on to, like where they sit in the film room instead of sitting with their little sister, the timing of their pregame or pre-practice prayer. I felt like there was big momentum, and then we stop and pray, and then da, 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 and that's all things that they've done for all these years. And so, how do you have conversations about the things that are really important to them, and then the things that are really important to me, and we had to kind of meet in the middle on those things, as long as none of them compromised the standard, which at a place Toledo was not a problem. The standard was very, very high. So I think just having that, having your ears on with your eyes, and seeing and listening to what they're telling you when the body language shifts, or when the seniors cut eyes at each other, like, wait a minute. So just let them have their stuff, and then I realized pretty quickly that it was more of a renovation than a rebuild.
Hmm.
Um, So we didn't want to change the structure or the foundation, but we did want to mix up some things in the way that we played and the way that the way that we lift and the way that we train and the way, some things that we felt like we could add value to them individually and collectively.
Definitely. I do want to go back though with talking on the terminology piece. I think that's such a big thing, right? Like, again, I can talk to five different staffs and they're going to have five different ways of saying the exact same thing. So in terms of getting on page with that, is that just like a sit down meeting at the beginning, or kind of how do you work on building that? I'm sure it's obviously something you kind of keep doing every practice, every game, and reinstilling that, but kind of having that mind meld between who's here and getting on board with what the terminology is.
We use the summer for a lot of those things. Normally
Yeah.
in the summer, I like to do a lot of player development individually, work on their bag, or, whatever whatever we're going to call it these days, or their weaknesses. But it was really important to the seniors. They made it clear, like, they needed to know, like, big picture, what are we doing? What is this pace that you speak of? And fortunately, we had Nan Garcia on our team, who I coached at Penn State, and could kind of be the translator for me at times, and kind of connect the dots as far as what we're trying to do in the pace and things like that. But no, it was just really important this summer for them to get that big picture view. And so we quite literally had a vocabulary sheet, and these are offensive terms, defensive terms. Do you call it lock and chase? What do you call defending a stagger? All the things around the board, defended ball screens. They primarily iced in the past, so we have three different ball screen coverages. How are we communicating that to them? How are they communicating that to one another? So there was all these different layers of language. So it's like how we talk to them, how they talk to us, how they talk to one another was really the biggest thing, because the seniors naturally early on would revert back to their native language and then we would translate for the freshmen. So we had to really buy in, and I'm proud of the work that we did there early.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you're hitting on to, it's so fun to see too, because like obviously, like I don't want to take away anything from the last couple of years, because some of the best, I mean, pure uh competitiveness in basketball that this school's seen, but also like I think what's been really cool is right away. I mean, I just can watch seeing like, being someone who's watched Kira Goss since she was at Ben Davis, like Sammy McConaughey since she was, a high schooler, which also really cool story too, just for her, like somebody who was not a scholarship player to like get to where she's at. But like I can watch both of them and say, I look at this new offense, I'm like, I think this is better for them in terms of what they can do. And again, it's always how things change and evolve, but it's not even just the terminology aspect, like you mentioned. I think this is just, I mean, in terms of two different styles of playing basketball. Last year, I mean, so much, and it was successful, but like
Very.
so much of it was set play driven, slower pace, and now it is just like it's a lot of to me at least in watching, it's a lot more actions instead of trying to run plays, and I think that plays so well with again a player like Kira, a player like Sammy who's just athletic and slash can make plays. But you can tell too, like especially I was watching the Marshall game back again yesterday, and I was like, as compared to now too, like you can see like, oh, okay, well, there's still like those little like lag moments of like filling
Right.
in spots. But again, I think that's part of what makes it really fun. You can see what like where it's going to keep picking up. But how do you work on making that kind of shift? Because that is a big shift. Especially like I think people watch just on like the actual on-court product, but I think what you are practicing is like just wildly different in terms of like how you're instilling basketball and kind of teaching reads. So what is that process like, on top of the terminology too?
Uh, for them, it probably feels grueling. I
Yeah.
think the first thing I would say is that we had to unlearn a lot of things that were programmed in there. And I mean that in the best possible way. When you're running set plays, there's the check down reads, and they're really, really high IQ players. You've got to be to play for Tricia Cullop. But we kind of had to unlearn that fear of mistake, or the fear of failure, or the fear of running play to completion. There's no completion. And so one day I remember so vividly, it was like, some of these aha moments, because we're learning just as much as they are as we go through
Hmm.
this. I said, how many actions do we need to get a shot? And I was saying it kind of like, we should have scored by now. And they looked at me and they're like, we don't know. How many actions do we need? And I was like, no, no,
Yeah.
we need one if we do it right. And then obviously the more we, switch sides of the floor, the better we are. And so I was like, oh my gosh, they just don't know yet. yet. And so freeing them up to make mistakes and to get curious on the court. Again, like I said, these are bright women, high achieving women. So they want to get it right. They want to get it right every time. Allowing them to make mistakes and encouraging aggressive mistakes, I think was a big underwriting to kind of the success and the progress that you're seeing now. They had to learn to trust each other. There was a lot of conversation earlier about, hey, listen, coach, we just did what coach said and it worked. And I'm like, yeah, it worked really well. And so now I'm giving them the freedom to make choices. And then also coupling that with, hey, all this freedom comes with responsibility on our shot selections, on our pace, those kinds of things. And so proud of their buy-in. Kira and Sammy especially. I think this system is great for Nan Garcia, who is a really deep range threat, but also an incredible passer and decision maker. She quarterbacks a lot for us. You're going to see that more and more as she gets comfortable. She had some injury stuff this summer that kind of limited her, so she's just really hitting her stride. And then adding Kendall Caruthers to that was a game changer. She just is such a natural flow. 4 for 4 from 3 the other night, which is incredible. And she takes a little bit of that pressure off of those guys because she can get in there and sauce a little bit and make play for herself and others.
Yeah, you beat me to my question too. I was gonna ask, how did you get Kendall on your radar? Because like I didn't, I mean, it's my job to watch everything. And like so I didn't even tell you, but I do bracketology for the Athletic, and so it's like you got to watch everything. And I
Everything.
didn't even watch St. Francis, PA that much last year. I went, obviously going through and checking, like I know you guys didn't play them last year. So how
Right.
did you get Kendall on your radar? Because she's somebody like she popped statistically for me every time I did kind of stats dives last year, but watching this exactly like you said. I mean, just a perfect like flow pace player who can just make plays. That's what it's about. So how did she kind of come on your guys' radar? I know obviously she's from Holland, so like right in the area, but
For sure.
I mean, there's a lot of kids from Toledo. So like, what was it,
Exactly.
how did that kind of first happen?
Yeah, no, for sure. So at Monmouth, Ari Vanderhoop had decided we had everybody back, but
Hmm.
Ari was kind of one of our really good lead guards, and so we had one spot to fill in the portal, and she was that combo guard, that scorer, and we had a really good freshman class coming in, and I told our staff, I said, I don't, and so then we had the 5 seniors that were stayed and do their 5th year at Monmouth, and so I told our staff, listen, I want at minimum a 2 year. Because we need to, keep building for the future. I said, but we need a swaggy guard that can come in here and run our stuff, and we needed a personality that wasn't going to step on, the kids that had won that championship and done all those things, but that had the confidence to play with them. So then all of a sudden, I'm at Toledo, and Jeff Lanier, associate head coach, came with, and he went back through all the notes that we were, the work that we had done in Monmouth preparing for Ari to leave. And he said, you remember this kid? And I was like, yeah, I liked her. And we thought it would be too far though, because rumor had that she wanted to come back home when we reached out to St. Francis. So made the call, talked to her high school coach, got her over, and it went from there. So a little bit of the pre-work that we'd done at our previous institution, but the moment we met, we just had a connection. I loved her family. I loved why she wanted to come home, why she wanted to take the next step. And everything I heard from St. Francis was, positive, positive, positive. They were so happy for her that she was going to get the opportunity to come home and play for Toledo. So it was one of those kind of fate things that you're just like, whew,
Yeah.
thank you. You can be really good in recruiting. And I think we try to be, but then you can also kind of get lucky occasionally. I think that was one of those, the stars aligned kind of things.
Absolutely. I mean, going off that too, like you mentioned, having a swaggy guard, I love hearing that because I think so often I hear a college coach say swaggy guard with a negative connotation.
No.
So like, hearing you speak positively on that, kind of empowering a player to just be themselves on court. I think that's a big thing, like being able to do that. When you are looking for and searching for that kind of thing, and I mean, you mentioned swaggy too. I think of you coaching Atisha Heideman, recruiting her at Marquette, like definition of a swaggy guard. But like again, like finding that and kind of building up the best aspects of that. What does that look like for you and kind of getting the most out of that?
Well, I think it starts in the relationship first. Knowing one another, trusting one another, building that vision for them as a person, a student, and a player at Toledo. Talking about what it's going to feel like when you come down and hit that huge kickback three at the top of the key, and Savage blows up, and the roof blows off, and then you're running back and you catch your mom's eye. Like those kind of moments are what we're trying to paint the picture of, and then you get to work toward it. A lot of film, a lot of film with Casey, and I think most of our film is me hitting that space bar and looking at her because she's wide open, and she's like, I gotta shoot that.
Hmm.
So she was passing up a lot of stuff early, and again, her personality is not needy, it's not demanding even of her teammates. It was probably, maybe golly, the 10th or 12th practice of the year before this, she just like went off, and the seniors were like, what? And not that she wasn't working hard, it was just she was just getting to know everybody, and then obviously she's really, really taken off. But I think a lot of film work, a lot of work in the gym too, just getting our feet right. Knowing when and where she's going to get shots is something that she had to learn, because again, we're not running the play, we're making reads. And so and then she's been able to get downhill. But it's really, really fun. I think I probably spend most of my time saying to her, like, if I could score every single time I had the ball, I would. I wasn't, maybe that's why God didn't give me that. I don't know. But like I ask her and Sammy McConowitz regularly, like, what's it like to be able to score whenever you want? And they're like, stop it. So just filling them up with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean to keep on that train too. I think I do a lot of my work in scouting and just in that background. I think the thing that you really, to me, like I used to always think I was one of those people coming up was like, oh, you can teach anybody to shoot, and obviously there's always like you can do some stuff mechanically, you can make some things work, and you can get people to a certain level. But I think the thing I always come back to is you can't really teach confidence. Like I
Right.
think there's just such a difference in that. Like there was this really great dude who worked for the Knicks named Owen Phillips. He has a Substack now where he does a ton of stuff with like data tutorials and explaining stuff. He put this really great thing out recently on how really 3-point efficacy and 3-point confidence slash volume are almost synonymous. Like being a confident shooter who's going to let it fly every single time demands more guarding by a defense through his tracking data than somebody who shoots 40% from three. Obviously, you want to have mesh at the same point, but I think kind of that's the exact point. And especially in a read-based offense, so much of it is just making the right decision quickly. It doesn't even have to be the right decision. Make a decision quickly. How
Quickly,
do you
right.
instill that? Because again, like exactly what we're talking about, like a team that was routinely going like 18, 20 seconds into the shot clock last year, like I think that, finding that kind of balance of timing and confidence in what you're doing is I'm always fascinated to hear how people are kind of repping that out and working on that.
But I think repping it out, absolutely, and repping it out at game pace, thanks for the practice guys of getting in there and adding that extra level of intensity and the necessity to cut hard in order to get results. But I think what kind of finally stuck, and I said this one day and it just kind of came out. I told him I didn't want him to have to learn it twice. I don't
Hmm.
want you to have to learn it at a comfortable speed and pace and then have to learn it again at max speed. So just make the decision quick and get out of there. And then eventually you'll make it quick and you'll make it right. I was like, we've got plenty of time. If we got it the first time on the curl or the break or the split or whatever it might be, you'll get it again. Just stay with it, stay in it. And so they had to feel that, the rewards of that as it came down, and again, dozens and dozens of times. And I think the other thing, to your point on the 3-point confidence, Jackie Alexander on our staff does a lot of our offensive analytics, and it's been astounding for me to be reminded. I knew this, but to be reminded of the higher our shot quality is, the more likely we are to get an offensive rebound. And that's something that we hit really hard. We want to crash. I think we have the players to crash, especially when we get in league. I think we'll be able to create a lot of stuff for ourselves. And that just gives us a little bit of confidence. They only, early on, they only see the result. They can't really grasp, hey, we just did 9 things right, but we missed the 3, or we missed, the dump down or whatever it might be. And the 10th thing is not the most important thing. That thing will come. So when we were getting offensive rebounds and putting back in, they could see points going on the board and they're good as long as as that's happening. But now they're into the confidence of coming off the court for a media, and they're saying, hey, look at me on they're switching this, look at me on, and I'm like, guys, they're getting it, they're getting it,
Yeah.
this is so good. So that just it gives them a lot of confidence. They're communicating to one another at the highest level we've had so far. And that just shows you their curiosity again and their trust that they're building with one another. And I think when you run a read offense, there's an investment because you are giving over some decisions to them. So they're so invested in the outcome. Not that they weren't in the past and not that they aren't when we run set plays. But seeing their confidence grow and that has been really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, speaking on the media aspect too, I can't remember which game it was from, but recently Hannah was in post game was like, I got a point rim running, like like getting that like like exactly you said. I think kind of seeing that light click is really cool because you just never know sometimes. It takes time and you never know when it's going to happen. So it's really dope seeing that early on. Um, but something I didn't even ask yet that is less about basketball, but just in general, like getting to know this entire team. Like, how
Yeah.
do you go about that? Because I think it's so much. I mean, I don't know. It sounds cliche, but because I just used to always think talent, 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 like on court. Like, you really need to know, and because especially in this, to have that trust and build that up between, coach and player, like you got to build that relationship off the court. So, what is that like coming in and figuring out kind of how to build that relationship with each player?
I'm fortunate that I also have an amazing coaching staff
Yeah.
who really cares about relationships. So I would say, as a unit, we've really attacked that. It's important to all of us. That's why they were right for me on we talk about out teaming the other team a lot. So we talk about that as a coaching staff too. Like we're a little team as well, and so how can we model these things for them? But I think that's been a group effort. I'm fortunate that they support me in that and they give me little nuggets of like so and so's got a bio test today, she was up all night, whatever it might be. But I think just time. And I do feel a little bit badly for the freshmen because normally they would get the bulk of that attention early. I would have recruited them and then we can nurture them through the homesickness and some of the things that come with the transition and the challenges. But I'm getting to know all 15 at this point. And so that has been a little bit of a hurdle, but one that I love. And I think we're through that now. We're through that. I called it with the team the messy middle. There's just this messy middle where we're going to have to muck through, like, I don't know you, you don't know me, and that's okay. And I think we're at a point now, with the buy-in and with the trust and, just by showing up consistently every day as a coaching staff, being who we say we are, bringing energy every day, valuing them as humans and not just players. Like I said, these seniors are getting their master's degree. Hannah Novorosky is going to leave Toledo, a nurse practitioner. Go down the line. Kira Goss is doing her master's in psychology. Nan's getting her MBA. There's so many amazing things happening to talk with them and learn about them beyond the basketball court. We try to dive into that early.
No, absolutely. I think that's like you said with Toledo, the interesting part. Like I think it is such a you don't really think about it, but like I mean, one of the best engineering schools in the Midwest in the country. Same thing with nursing. Like I remember when I was there, I was in comms and I was like, seeing all these people and especially the pharmacy school is crazy. Like there's just so much going on in STEM that is like it's beyond me because I'm just so used to like I'm on the basketball court, man. But like,
I'm
so
with
it's
you.
a
I
little
majored in communications.
yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. Like, hey,
like,
whatever keeps me closer to basketball
right,
and as far away
exactly.
from physics as possible, I'm very excited to be in. But exactly, I mean, I think that's part of what's so interesting about the game. A couple more things to close up on too. I think like you mentioned with your staff, part of what was really interesting in seeing how they were built out. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Jeff is the only person who came with you from Monmouth.
Yes.
So coming into building out that staff, it seemed like it was very intentional in how you built it. So I wanted to ask like how that all came together because yeah, exactly like you said, I think so much of getting that buy-in is having that small team within the team as well. So what was that like and kind of building that, how it all came together?
I will speak for myself. Hiring a staff is the hardest, most humbling, scariest thing. So I was fortunate that I got to hire people that I knew. I
Mm,
was fortunate that Toledo gave me the resources that we needed, to make a big push and get a really qualified staff. And yeah, I knew Jeff had Midwest ties. I knew that was really important in Ohio and in the MAC. And he was all in from the jump, which is amazing. And then I wanted to give my Monmouth staff a little bit of time to figure everything out. Um, you know, was kind of crazy there with Sean being a candidate at Monmouth and some different things going on. Angela, having never really left the East Coast, I knew that it was a possibility that I would not be able to bring both of them with me. Um, and so happy for where they landed. It all works out. It always all works out. But Jackie Alexander had been on my radar. I think she's an incredible recruiter, and I say that first because she's also a really good basketball coach. I'm blown away by her intentionality, her knowledge, her discipline, the way that she builds relationships with our players and recruits. And so, kind of joked at Monmouth early on, it's hardest to do the job that your head coach once did. I was a recruiting coordinator for 18 years. So Jackie's stepping into this situation, and I've got kind of my idea of how I think that should look and feel, but I also give our staff full autonomy. Do you know a better way? Do you have a way that's better than mine? That's more current with technology than mine. And so we've been able to collaborate. She makes me better every day. And she's incredibly knowledgeable in the recruiting world and on the court. And once we had that, I knew I needed someone who was going to be a great player developer. Also wanted someone with Canadian ties. We had a lot of success recruiting in Canada when I was at Monmouth, and Sean Bear did a great job up there for us. And so Takima had been at Rhode Island. We were recruiting a lot of the same players. I always ask players when we ran into the same teams over and over at Monmouth. And so I would ask the recruits, who do you talk to up there? And I wanted to know who was killing it for them in recruiting. And so found out that it was TK, and know her basketball IQ. I was just basketball family, know her heart. She's the biggest. She just completely disarms you when you're in her presence. She's so calm and kind and generous with her time and her energy. And so, I reached out to Tammy, and then got in touch with TK, and I don't know, it worked out really, really well. I think we all fit one another. Like I said, they make me better every day. Jeff is the best teacher that I've ever worked with. He just does an incredible job of breaking things down very simply. He's worked for other head coaches. He understands the language and how to do it at a really high level. So I'm kind of bouncing all over. I could talk about those guys for years and years and years. I'm so thankful to have them, and they're a huge part of our early success.
Yeah. Especially like you mentioned in terms of calling Tammy Reese, like how do those conversations go? Be like, I want to, I want to hire I want to talk about hiring one of your coaches. Like, how do you go about that? Because like, I think that's, it's something you hear about, but in terms of actually doing that, it's got to be an interesting conversation for sure.
I think there's just for me personally with Tammy and with Brenda Mock, Kirkpatrick Brown down at ETSU, and Jackie, like Brenda and I have been friends since college. So that one was a little bit easier. Tammy, we just have a tremendous amount of respect for one another. She
Mhm.
had called me a couple years ago for one of our coaches at Monmouth. And so just a mutual respect. I think, some things have evolved in the women's basketball world, and you can DM somebody on Instagram and offer them a job, get their number. You don't have to. I'm a little bit more traditional and old fashioned. Just want to call a head coach, before I reach out to one of their assistants and make sure that they know that we're talking. And I like that both of those assistant coaches were communicating with their head coaches as well. It lets me know that if they join my staff, they'll treat me with the same respect if there's another opportunity for them. Just for me, that was the right way to do it. But the conversation was amazing. Tammy and I set up the call. She was working with USA Basketball, made time, had nothing but great things to say. I think we all want to help our coaches reach their fullest potential and reach their goals as well. And that's something that I talk with everyone on my staff about in the interview process. Like, I'm not only here to help our players reach their goals, I'm here to help you reach your goals as well, and help you, whatever the next level might be for you, whether it's to be the best you can be at Toledo for the rest of your life, or be a BCS assistant or go on to be a head coach. Those goals are my responsibility as well.
Yeah, no, I really like hearing that. To close out too, just in terms of like continuing to grow how you see the game, I think that's something I've been interested by, especially is, when you're getting to the level of being a head coach. Not to compare, but even just in doing like scouting stuff, I get so ingrained in like a cycle of like, okay, well, I know I'm watching college for 6 hours today, and when I wake up, I have to catch up on these Euro games, and oh, hey, there's an Australian game at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, where's the time to like kind of pick apart, like I don't know, I know I can struggle sometimes to pick apart and find time to like sit down and try and learn something, and especially for the system that you guys play and for what you do. I think that's part of what I wanted to really ask is like how, where do you keep learning most? How do you kind of keep finding time to adapt, tweak, and find new things? Because I think, I mean, part of what I love about the game is how much it continues to grow, especially like I don't know how much you watch as a W, but I mean, that's most of my work. Like seeing
Right.
the shift over the last 3 years in play has been astronomical, and I think that's so important for the college level, knowing that, in my opinion. I don't think everybody agrees with that, but being in that line is really big. So like, what has that been like for you and kind of continuing to adapt and see the game grow and on court, and like kind of how you have continued to tweak alongside that?
So I think probably one of the biggest reasons I'm sitting in this chair at Toledo is just I played Division 2. My first job was a GA at Kennesaw State, and then I kind of worked my way up from there. But the whole time, I just kind of looked around, and I was like, when I was at Kennesaw State, I was like, golly, Georgia Tech is so good. Like, what are they doing? So I was unafraid to ask.
Hmm.
So even still, I'll pick up the phone and call. Early on here at Toledo, there was the players that we inherited weren't the ones making ball screen reads. And so, who was the best ball screen team in the CAA? In my opinion, it was William and Mary. So I picked up the phone, called Aaron. I said, "Hey, what are you doing
They
practice
run
every
good
day?"
stuff.
Yeah, they run good stuff. And like they, even when they were playing P4 teams, now scouting William and Mary, I'm like, oh my gosh, they made them change their ball screen defense 3 times because they just pick and pick and pick. And so, and they were always ready. So I was like, what are you guys doing in practice for your ball screen reads? So she's like, oh, well, we start just breaking it down and talking about it. So I'll pick up the phone and call, whoever I, know is doing something really well, and just ask questions and terminology. And, she talked about the decision line and how they instill that. And now our players are saying that, no, you went too far past the decision line. And I'm like, that's amazing. So they're starting to use the language with one another. But I watch a lot of basketball. I'm fortunate that my partner loves basketball. I'll come home and Big Ten Network's on. I'll come home and the WNBA's on. So we watch a ton. And then I'll make little notes and write it down and go back, or call Megan Vogel. She was at UW Green Bay when I was
Yeah,
at
Phoenix now.
Marquette, and
Yeah.
we became good friends. And so I was like, I actually have a friend who's an assistant in the WNBA now. So I was just like, wear her out. But the film time is the film time. Try to be really intentional about that. But then ask questions, because I think, I learned from Stephanie Glantz when I was at Columbia. You can trick yourself into thinking something's easy to teach. You see something on that the NBA or the WNBA or EuroLeague's running, and you're like, oh, we can put that in. It's like, no, you should ask what's going to be hard and what details are important for them that they really emphasize. Because if those are lost, then what they're making look really easy is going to become really frustrating and hard for you. So I just try to get stuff that catches my eye, and then follow up and follow through on the details and ways to teach it the best of my ability. And then again, I'll keep talking about our coaching staff. So sorry not to wear that out, but
No, I
I
love
give
it.
a lot of autonomy to them. Like, bring me stuff, drills, put that in. Like, are you comfortable putting that in today? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, cool, you got it. I'll be on your end. Let's talk about the things and the points we want to hit and the language we want to use, and go from there. But I think it's a collective effort. I encourage them all the time to manage up, manage up, manage up. It's a skill that has been really valuable for me in this head coaching seat, especially with changing leaderships. So I just want to empower them to do that, to put them in a position to be comfortable doing that when they take their next role.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think like you said, I think so much of it is it's you can watch a team running something really well. It's like, oh wow, we can do that. But then I
I'll
don't know,
throw
it's
that in
funny.
tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So I've
no.
spent a lot of time around Notre Dame, and I used to think to myself like, oh, Princeton can't be that hard to teach. And then you watch, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, there's so much nuance in like every little thing you do. And that's not, I mean, it's not just Princeton. It's like every, to most levels, every system has like that kind of layering to it. But also I think that speaks to how awesome basketball is, but also it's just like, it's really cool with that aspect. But Ginny, I've taken a ton of your time. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm excited to watch you guys keep growing and keep taking off, lifting off, I should say. So anything you want to shout out or mention before you out of here?
No, I just really appreciate your time and what you're doing to grow the game. And yeah, I think these things, these conversations, I've already sparked 3, 4 ideas that I'm going to follow up on just in chatting with you, and some of the things that you shared. But I think, women's basketball is now, the time is now. And I'm excited for everybody to get on board, and just want to make sure everybody who watches knows, if you have any questions, you want to reach out. If you're taking on a new role or new responsibility, I have plenty of time to tell you all the things that I got wrong. Should make you feel a little bit better about your process and what you're doing. But no, yeah, I'm excited for the game, excited for University of Toledo. And maybe if we chat again in January or February, you'll see that improvement and that growth. But thanks for all the support.
Yeah, I'm very excited to watch it. To everyone watching and listening, be sure to subscribe down below. And most importantly, keep up with all things Toledo women's basketball. Really good season ahead.